Good morning. Before I begin with the message, I want to say just a word to our seniors who were honored here today. Whatever life has in store for you, whatever educational and employment endeavors, I hope you know that the doors of this place, this community of faith, will always be open to you, and you are loved. Jesus loves you, this I know. So this morning, we're at a campfire breakfast. John tells us this is the third time that Jesus appeared to his disciples after the resurrection. A small group of disciples are fishing along the shoreline, doing what they've always done when Jesus calls to them on the shore, and he tells them to bring in some of their catch, and he will cook them breakfast. But if you notice, if you read earlier in John 21, there's not a lot of conversation happening here, especially among Peter. If you recall, it had ended very, very badly for Peter, but we'll get into that in just a minute. I want you to hear this conversation around breakfast. John chapter 21, beginning in verse 15. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he had said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And after this, he said to him, "Follow me." Can you imagine what this moment must have felt like for Peter? After how it had ended with Jesus, he betrayed him, denied him 3 times. He had run off and hid in shame and fear. But you would have never imagined that to look at Peter's story from the beginning in the gospel. Peter had been one of the first disciples to drop everything and follow Jesus. He was there for the miracles and the healings and the teachings. He saw Jesus feed 5,000 hungry people with just a few loaves of bread. He watched Jesus in people's pain, welcome the outcast, saw Jesus calm the storm in the boat. Who was it who dared to step out of the boat to come towards Jesus? It was Peter. Gosh, Peter's faith compelled him so many times, again and again and again. From the beginning, Jesus called Peter the rock. And Peter was the first of the disciples to call Jesus who he was, Messiah, Lord. And when the Roman soldiers came on that fateful night to arrest Jesus, it was Peter who grabbed a sword, who was willing to fight for him. And when Jesus had told Peter in the upper room during that Passover meal that he would be the one that would deny him not once, but 3 times, Peter said, "Never, not me." But words fall short. When the going got tough, Peter failed him. He wouldn't even admit that he knew. It ended with Peter saying, "I do not know the man." That's how it ended. Peter running off in shame and fear. Do you think Peter was scared to face Jesus again? You ever disappoint someone so badly you don't even want to look them in the eye again, run away because the guilt and the shame, and Jesus could just let him have it in this moment. Jesus could say, "Hey, you weren't there for me. You've disappointed me. Your so-called rock didn't even have a backbone. At the very least, at the very minimum, don't you think Jesus could have said, "I told you so"? I mean, come on. Isn't it great to actually say that to someone when you know you've been right? "I told you so." Oh, it feels so good to say it. He doesn't even say that here. Peter got scared. He left. He hid. Just when the going got tough, the shame. Imagine the shame. You know, shame is different than guilt. It's heavier, isn't it? Guilt can make us feel real bad, real sorry about something, but shame is something inward. Social worker Brene Brown has this great writing she's done about shame, and she actually says that the voice of shame, it says, instead of "I made a mistake," shame says, "I am the mistake." Instead of learning and growing and changing from it, shame keeps us hiding. Shame keeps us locked away, believing we are nothing. Writer Max Lucado has this great quote about shame. He says, "If pride is what goes before the fall, the shame is what keeps you from getting up after one." Peter had done the very thing he swore he would never ever do. And here's what Jesus says to him. "Simon Peter, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." "Feed my lambs." "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." "Tend my sheep." "Simon Peter, do you love me?" "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." "Feed my sheep." "Follow me." There's not a lecture here, not a scolding or a good talking to, not even "I told you so" here in this moment. No, Jesus goes straight to healing Peter's wounds. That's who he is. Just like the stories Jesus told about lost things, the parable of the lost coin, the parable of the lost sheep, the parable of the lost sons. The stories end the same way, with reunion, with celebration. That's what God cares about. And here is Jesus. He goes straight to reunion here. All the pain and the shame that Peter is carrying, and he chooses to try to heal. "Feed my sheep, Peter." For every time he disappointed him, Jesus gives him another chance to make it right. "Feed my sheep. Tend my lambs." Again and again and again. "Follow me, Peter." Jesus doesn't give up on Peter. And maybe that's no small thing to say. He didn't give up on Peter. Even though Peter had failed him terribly again and again and again, he doesn't give up on him. In fact, he uses this moment to trust into Peter's clumsy hands the ministry of Christ's church, to be the church. "Feed my sheep, Peter." You know, Mr. Rogers, in this sermon series, we've been looking at his faith. I watched an interview that he gave this week, and he mentioned a quote that one of his seminary professors had said to him when he was in school. And he said his professor's name was Dr. William Orr, and he said his professor said to him one day, "Fred, there's one thing evil cannot stand, and that is forgiveness." One thing evil cannot stand, and that is forgiveness. It reminds me of a beautiful line from the letter to the church in Hebrews. I've always loved this line. "I will wipe them of their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more." Jesus doesn't give up on Peter. And at the start of Jesus' very public ministry, we see it from the get-go of Jesus showing us who he is. Do you remember that very first sermon he preached in Nazareth? It didn't exactly end very well, but it started out great. And in his hometown, he preached a sermon. And you remember what he quotes there? He quotes from the prophet Isaiah. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, anointed me to preach good news to the poor, proclaim freedom for the prisoners, sight for the blind, set the oppressed free, and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. He didn't proclaim God's wrath, judgment, condemnation. It was good news, healing, mercy, freedom. For God so loved the world. For God so loved the world. That's what changes us. Fear makes you hide. Shame keeps you stuck. But love, God's unconditional love, to know it in the fiber of your being, to witness it, love is what changes us. And church, here we have a Savior who is refusing to give up on Peter. And he doesn't give up on you either. He doesn't give up on me. You know, this week I was out and about running some errands in my life, and I'm being a little general here because this is a small town, and even though this person doesn't go to this church, I'm quite convinced he's probably somebody's cousin here today, so I'm going to speak very generically. And I was chatting with this guy. We were just making conversation about our lives, and he said something about his childhood that made me curious to hear more. And so I asked him, I said, "Did you have a hard childhood?" And he paused for a moment. And he said, "Well, let me just say, we never wanted, we had everything we ever needed, but there wasn't a lot of love in my family." He's almost 50 years old, and I could tell just saying that out loud was hard for him. And then he immediately followed up and he said, "But I tell you what, not a day goes by that I don't tell my children that I love them. I tell them every single day, no matter what, I love you. No matter what, where you go or what you do, I love you. My children know that." You know, one thing that Mr. Rogers knew, and I think he was so good at with his programming, is that he knew that we need to hear certain words. In fact, sometimes we need to hear certain words again and again and again so that we finally get the message. He knew that little kids needed to hear those words, and he knew that big kids needed to hear those words too. And he had, you know, his little songs, one of his songs that he sang, his little cheesy songs that he sang and wrote. He has one called "It's You I Like." It's you I like, it's not the things you wear, it's not the way you do your hair. It's you I like. The way you are right now, the way down deep inside you, not the things that hide you, not your toys, they're just beside you. It's you I like. He didn't use overtly churchy language to do it, but the message is clear. Love, as is. Not a better version of you, not a more perfect and improved version of you, not the you after you've had your coffee. He knew what we all need to remember and hear, little kids and big kids alike, a message of God's unconditional love. Like that day around the campfire with Peter, Jesus gave him the gift of his love and mercy. And he somehow knew that that's what Peter needed to hear. Again and again and again, he said those words over and over and over. He never gave up on Peter. So maybe you failed a time or two or three in your life. Maybe you've failed to commend the faith within you. Maybe you realize you have failed to live as the person God is calling you to be. Maybe you've gotten scared and hid when the going got tough. And maybe you know all too well what it means to disappoint the ones that matter most. So don't forget Peter. He learned to be that rock. He became a leader and teacher, the head of the Church of Jerusalem. You know, Christian tradition remembers that Peter, when he was being put to death by the Roman Empire himself, that he chose to be crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy to die the same way as Jesus. Follow me, And Peter did. So won't you join him? Follow the one who has loved you before your first breath. Follow the one who has loved you when you did not love yourself. Follow the one who loves you enough to offer his grace and mercy. Follow me.